High Counselor Vixith of the Galactic Science Council was having what humans would call one of those days. It had started normally enough, reviewing grant proposals for quantum stabilization research, denying requests for investigating improbable theories, and maintaining the rigid structure that had advanced galactic science for 10,000 years. Then the package arrived. Honored Council members. The cover letter began, written in perfectly acceptable galactic standard. Please find enclosed our team's recent findings regarding superluminal travel through quantum probability surfing. We've included practical applications, reproducible results, and a recipe for the coffee that made it all possible. Dr. Emma Thompson, FID. Coffee stains adorned the corners of the document. The margins contained hand-drawn diagrams that looked more like doodles than serious scientific notation. Someone had used a yellow highlighting device to mark certain passages with notes like, "This part's really cool," and "Wait till they see this." Vixith's primary heart skipped a beat. Their secondary heart wasn't doing much better. "Get me verification on the sender," they commanded their AI assistant. "This has to be a joke," from one of the younger researchers. "Verification completed," the AI responded. "Source: Sol System, Third Planet, Northern Hemisphere. Location designated as Dave's Diner and Particle Physics Lab, formerly Dave's Diner." Vixith's third heart joined the rebellion. The contents of the paper were even more disturbing. The human team had apparently discovered superluminal travel by accident while trying to solve an entirely different problem. Something about making the perfect toast without burning it. The breakthrough came when Dr. Thompson's burnt breakfast created what she termed a weird quantum hiccup. Most alarming of all, it worked. The paper included verified data from 3 separate test flights. Humans had achieved faster-than-light travel using a theory that read like stream of consciousness, equipment that shouldn't work together, and a complete disregard for at least 7 fundamental laws of physics. "Get me senior researcher Zixtal," Vixith commanded. And perhaps some of that coffee they mentioned. Hours later, the Council's emergency session was in full swing. Zixtal, the Council's leading expert on theoretical propulsion, stood before the assembled members, their tentacles twitching with barely contained agitation. "The humans have done something impossible," Zixtal began, by apparently not realizing it was impossible. "Their methodology is, they consulted their notes." Dr. Thompson describes it as surfing probability waves while they're not looking. That's not even proper scientific terminology. The council chamber erupted in concern, murmuring. One member fainted. "But the data is correct," Vixith pressed. "Infuriatingly so," Zixtal admitted. "They've achieved superluminal travel by essentially convincing physics to look the other way. The equations work, but they shouldn't. They're using parameters we'd never consider because they're clearly absurd. Except," they gestured helplessly at the verification data. "There's more," Vixith added grimly. "Check Appendix C." Zixtal flipped to the section and froze. They developed this over breakfast. "Over several breakfasts," Vixith corrected. Apparently, Dr. Thompson does her best thinking over something called chocolate chip pancakes. The council chamber descended into chaos. Thousands of years of careful, methodical scientific advancement had just been upended by humans who treated physics like a suggestion rather than a law. Worse still, they'd included a handwritten note offering to host the verification team and show them the ropes, another phrase that required cultural translation. As the council debated their response, Vixith studied the coffee stain on the cover page. Perhaps it was time for galactic science to try something new. After all, the humans had achieved in months what the council had deemed impossible for centuries. "Schedule the verification team," Vixith announced, "and send word that we accept their offer of hospitality." The galaxy would never be the same. Neither would breakfast. Junior researcher Naltic watched in mounting horror as another perfectly calibrated experiment failed spectacularly. The laboratory, once a pristine testament to scientific precision, now bore scorch marks from 17 attempts to replicate the humans' results. The air smelled faintly of ozone and defeat. Impossible, muttered senior researcher Zixtal, reviewing the data for the 18th time. We followed their methodology exactly. They gestured at the holographic replay of their most recent attempt, where the quantum field had once again refused to achieve the theoretical probability surf state described in Dr. Thompson's paper. Have we, though? Galactic asked, earning sharp looks from their colleagues. Look at the human documentation again. Specifically, their environmental conditions. The research team gathered around the original paper, now bordered with sticky notes and increasingly desperate annotations. Galactic pointed to a casual mention in the methodology section. Best results achieved during Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven. Something about the guitar solo really gets those particles moving. Surely you're not suggesting. Zixtal began. I am. Galactic straightened their lab coat. We've replicated their equipment. We've followed their equations, but we haven't replicated their ambience. The word hung in the air like a heretical proclamation. 20 minutes later, the laboratory's pristine silence was shattered by the opening riffs of 20th-century Earth rock music. Galactic had requisitioned the complete documentation of human musical accompaniment from Dr. Thompson's experiments. The other researchers watched in mixed horror and fascination as their junior colleague began to move slightly to the rhythm, adjusting controls with what could only be described as groove. The quantum field sensors sparked to life. That's impossible, Zixtal whispered, all four eyes fixed on the readings. The probability matrices were aligning in ways their most advanced models said they shouldn't. The music cannot be affecting quantum-level interactions. Maybe, Galactic suggested, increasing power to the main array. We should stop telling the universe what's impossible. The breakthrough came during the guitar solo. As the music reached its crescendo, the quantum field achieved the exact resonance pattern described in Thompson's paper. For exactly 4.2 seconds, they achieved superluminal probability surfing. The celebration was decidedly unscientific. But why? Zixtal demanded hours later, addressing the emergency council session. Why does this defy every established protocol? High Counselor Vakesith, who had been studying human research methodologies, offered a disturbing hypothesis. Perhaps, they suggested, our protocols are the problem. The council chamber erupted again. Suggestions of abandoning 10,000 years of carefully developed scientific methodology were normally grounds for immediate research suspension, but the data didn't lie. Humans had cracked superluminal travel by essentially ignoring everything the galaxy's finest minds knew to be true. There's more, Galactic added, having been summoned to present their findings. Subsequent tests show improved results when researchers, they check their notes. Stop overthinking it. Direct quote from Dr. Thompson's latest transmission. Stop overthinking it. A council member demanded. We're scientists. Thinking is what we do. With respect, Galactic continued, humans appear to have developed a hybrid methodology. They think deeply about problems, then stop thinking about them. They call it letting the back of your brain do the heavy lifting while you jam out. The Council's collective expression suggested this might be the end of galactic civilization. But the results kept coming. Over the next week, research teams that adopted what was now being called the Thompson method achieved success rates orders of magnitude higher than traditional approaches. The galaxy's most prestigious laboratories now echoed with everything from classical Earth compositions to something called disco. More disturbing still, the researchers were enjoying themselves. We may need to reconsider our definition of proper scientific methodology, Vakesith announced to the Council, and perhaps install better audio systems in our laboratories. As if to punctuate their point, a success notification chimed from the research wing, accompanied by the distinctive sounds of Queen's "Another One Bites the Dust." Science, it seemed, had a new groove. The Galactic Council's verification team stood in what humans optimistically called a parking lot. staring at their destination in stunned silence. The coordinates had been triple-checked. This was, allegedly, humanity's premier FTL research facility. That sign says, Lucky Strike Lanes, senior investigator Kipperks noted, their crystalline appendages trembling slightly. With neon lighting. Former bowling alley, their human guide, Dr. Thompson, corrected cheerfully. She approached wearing what the team's cultural briefing identified as flip-flops and a t-shirt reading, Schrodinger's cat walks into a bar. We got it cheap after the pandemic. Plus, the lanes make great particle accelerator housings. Who knew? The investigation team's AI documented their collective blood pressure spike. Inside was worse, or better, depending on one's perspective on the laws of physics. The former bowling alley had been transformed into a labyrinth of cutting-edge equipment, most of it seemingly held together by what Dr. Thompson called zip ties and optimism. Large whiteboards covered the walls, filled with complex equations that occasionally spilled onto nearby pizza boxes. Here's where we had our first breakthrough, Dr. Thompson announced, gesturing to Lane 7. We were testing quantum field harmonics and Jerry, he's our maintenance guy, was fixing the pin setter. Somehow the mechanical timing of the pins dropping matched our quantum oscillation perfectly. Pure accident, but it got us thinking. Kipperks's assistant fainted. They were getting used to that. You developed faster than light travel because of a bowling alley maintenance schedule. Kipperks managed. Well, not just that, Dr. Thompson clarified. The real breakthrough came during cosmic bowling night. Turns out UV lights do interesting things to probability fields. Who wants to see the data? The data, as it turned out, was stored on a server farm housed in what used to be the snack bar. Cutting-edge quantum computers hummed next to an still operational nacho cheese dispenser. The verification team watched in horror and fascination as Dr. Thompson pulled up test results while absently making nachos. Your peer review process, Kipperks began carefully, seems unconventional. Oh, you mean Physics Friday? Dr. Thompson brightened. Yeah, we invite researchers from other fields for bowling and brainstorming. Last week, a marine biologist suggested modeling quantum fields like deep ocean currents. Changed our whole approach to probability surfing. Want to try? Lanes are still open. That won't be Mrs. Kipperks began, but their junior researcher, Mintix, was already accepting a pair of bowling shoes. 3 hours later, Kipperks found themselves updating their report while watching Mintix bowl a surprisingly good game. The equations on their tablet made less and less sense the more they tried to force them into standard scientific formatting. The problem, Dr. Thompson explained, sharing another plate of nachos, is that everyone assumed FTL was this big, serious thing that needed big, serious solutions. But the universe doesn't care about serious. It cares about what works. As if to prove her point, the probability field sensors started pinging. The quantum harmonics were aligning perfectly with Minx's bowling rhythm. See, Dr. Thompson grinned. The physics just needed to loosen up a bit, like a good bowling arm. The team's final report to the council proved challenging to write. How did one formally document success achieved through methods that defy documentation? They settled for brutal honesty. Human FTL research facilities maintain unexpectedly high success rates through methods that technically qualify as scientific, albeit with concerning levels of informality. Standard protocols are treated as suggestions rather than rules. Equipment configuration appears random but produces consistent results. Most alarming. Their methods are proving reproducible when conventional scientific rigidity is abandoned in favor of what they term going with the flow. In a private addendum, Kipperks added, additionally, their facility's nachos are surprisingly good. This may or may not be relevant to their success rate. Further investigation recommended. Back at Lucky Strike Lanes, Dr. Thompson added another pizza box to their equation wall, its calculations explaining why quantum fields responded so well to rhythm. Below it, she'd written what was becoming her team's unofficial motto. The universe doesn't care how you solve its mysteries, as long as you solve them right. Lane 7's pin setter clinked in agreement. The Galactic Council's First Contact Ethics Committee was having an existential crisis. The holoscreen before them displayed what appeared to be a retired librarian from Ohio, cheerfully waving from the cockpit of a small FTL-capable ship she'd named Bookmobile Alpha. Mrs. Barbara Fletcher, age 68, Council member Taznil read from the report, has made approximately 27 unauthorized first contact events in the past month alone. Her ship's cargo manifest lists, knitted mittens, cookie tins, book club selections, and something called casserole dishes. The cookies are quite good, junior observer Remtall added, earning several sharp looks. Or so I've heard. The committee watched as another video played. Mrs. Fletcher, wearing a hand-knitted sweater with "Reading is fundamental across the galaxy" emblazoned across it, carefully arranging welcome baskets on a pre-contact world. Each basket contained a selection of Earth literature, basic language guides, recipes, and what she called just a few homey touches. "She's corrupting the natural development of species," Taznil exclaimed. Actually, Remtall consulted their data pad. The affected civilizations show a 47% increase in peaceful technological development. Apparently, starting with Charlotte's Web rather than military technology makes a difference. The committee's crisis deepened when they discovered Mrs. Fletcher wasn't an isolated incident. Humanity's casual approach to FTL travel had led to what they termed weekend trips to nearby star systems. The Council's carefully maintained first contact protocols were being rendered obsolete by human grandmothers bearing baked goods. Here's another one. Taznil groaned. A Mr. James Chen, high school science teacher, has been using his personal FTL vessel too. They checked the report twice, organize intergalactic field trips. The footage showed a class of teenagers in matching space science rudolies, T-shirts, taking selfies with bewildered alien scientists. Their teacher could be heard in the background. "Remember, kids, 2 pages on xenobiology, due Monday, and yes, this will be on the test." "But how are they affording these ships?" someone asked. Apparently, Dr. Thompson's team published their designs with an open-source license, Remtall explained. "Humans are building them in their garages. Mrs. Fletcher's ship was a retirement project. She calls it her cosmic RV." The committee watched another clip. Mrs. Fletcher teaching a group of tentacled alien children how to make s'mores during what she described as just a quick stop to share some Earth culture. The children's parents appeared equally fascinated by the concept of graham crackers. "We must maintain order," Taznil insisted. "There are procedures, protocols." "Ma'am," an aide interrupted, delivering a fresh report. "We've just recorded 15 new civilian FTL launches from Earth. 8 appear to be food delivery services." The room fell silent. Humanity wasn't just exploring space. They were making it cozy. Every carefully crafted regulation about species development and cultural contamination was being undone by book clubs and bake sales. "Perhaps," Remtall suggested carefully, "we should reconsider our approach. The data shows that informal, friendly contact actually reduces interspecies conflict. Mrs. Fletcher's cookie diplomacy has prevented 3 potential wars. Through snickerdoodles and book discussions, apparently, it's hard to maintain hostility when discussing Pride and Prejudice over fresh-baked cookies." The committee spent hours reviewing similar cases, a retired couple touring the galaxy in their converted Winnebago, documenting cool space stuff for the grandkids. A college student who turned FTL delivery into a thriving pizza business serving 5 star systems. A knitting circle that had somehow established trade relations with an advanced civilization using only yarn and persistence. Their final report to the Council was surprisingly brief. Humanity's approach to superluminal travel has rendered traditional first contact protocols obsolete. We recommend adapting our procedures to account for what they call the personal touch. Also, we request funding for a comprehensive study of this cookie diplomacy, for purely scientific reasons, of course. Meanwhile, somewhere in the Andromeda galaxy, Mrs. Fletcher was organizing her first intergalactic book club meeting. The topic, War of the Worlds. Such imagination, she told her alien guests, passing the cookie plate. But you know, reality turned out much friendlier. More snickerdoodles, dear. The galaxy would never be the same. It would be better. You put what in your FTL drive? Senior Safety Inspector Vixna stared at Engineer Jake Martinez, who was casually sipping coffee from a mug labeled Physics. It works, whether you believe in it or not. Duct tape, Jake repeated, taking another sip. Well, technically, it's quantum-reinforced adhesive strips now. Marketing said duct-taped didn't sound professional enough for the manual. The inspection team had arrived at Lucky Strike Lanes expecting to find safety violations. Instead, they found safety redundancies that bordered on paranoid obsession. Humans, it seemed, had assumed the universe was actively trying to kill them and had planned accordingly. But why 7 backup systems? Vixna asked, reviewing the safety protocols. Standard regulations only require 2. Jake laughed. You ever hear of Murphy's Law? Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So we figured everything would go wrong at the same time. In space, while on fire. The inspectors watched as Jake pulled up the ship's safety system schematics. It resembled a paranoid spider's web of interconnected failsafes, emergency protocols, and what humans called Plan Z, because you'll go through plans A to Y really fast when things get weird. C, standard procedure, says you need backup power, Jake explained, pointing to various sections. We've got backup power for the backup power, then backup power in case those fail. Then a hamster wheel hooked to a generator because someone said, what if? During a late-night design session. And well, it actually works. Vixna's assistant was frantically taking notes, but this level of redundancy should make the ships too heavy to achieve FTL. Should, yeah, Jake grinned. But we found out if you don't think too hard about that part, the ships work fine. We call it the Wile E. Coyote principle. It only fails if you look down. The inspection continued, revealing increasingly improbable safety measures. Every system had multiple backups, each more creative than the last. The emergency life support could apparently run on coffee in a pinch, because, as Jake put it, there's always coffee around when humans are involved. And this, Vixna pointed to a mysterious button labeled Really Bad Day Protocol. Oh, that's my favorite. Jake brightened. If everything else fails, it converts the entire ship's mass into energy using Dr. Thompson's quantum probability surfing principles. Basically turns the ship into a giant quantum surfboard to ride home on. That's impossible. Yeah, we get that a lot. Still works though. Tested it last Tuesday. Want to see the footage? The footage showed the test ship, completely depowered, successfully returning to Earth by essentially surfing a wave of its own impossibility. The math says it shouldn't work, Jake admitted. But we figured the universe's physics engine runs on different hardware than our simulation software. Sometimes you just gotta try stuff. The inspection team's final report caused quite a stir in the council. Human FTL vessels demonstrate a 100% survival rate through methods that can only be described as aggressively paranoid engineering. Their safety protocols appear to function largely because humans refuse to acknowledge their statistical impossibility. Of particular note, their emergency systems continue to operate even when ships lose all power, violating several fundamental laws of physics through what they term sheer stubbornness. In a private addendum, Vixna added, recommend immediate adoption of human safety standards across all council vessels. Also, investigate this duct tape. It appears to violate conservation of mass when applied with sufficient determination. Back at Lucky Strike Lanes, Jake was adding another entry to the ever-growing safety manual. Emergency procedure number 247. In case of temporal paradox, challenge causality to a bowling match. Note: Lane 7 seems to have the best luck with quantum outcomes. Dr. Thompson, passing by, noticed the entry and nodded approvingly. Did you add the part about the cosmic string backup bowling ball? Next section, Jake confirmed. Right after the chapter on using quantum entangled pizza delivery as an emergency navigation system. The universe, it seemed, had met its match in human safety engineers who treated the impossible as merely a challenge to overcome, preferably with duct tape. And somehow, it worked. Every single time. Cultural Integration Officer Mexley stood before the council, their presentation titled Unexpected Applications of Human FTL Technology, a comprehensive analysis of what we should have seen coming. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of unspecified manifestation, they began. We have a situation. Humanity isn't just using FTL for exploration or scientific advancement. They're using it for, they paused dramatically, takeout. The holoscreen displayed an advertisement. Joey's Intergalactic Pizza. From our oven to your door in any star system in 30 minutes or less. Time dilation effects may apply. Quantum coupons accepted. But that's just the beginning. Mexley continued. Dr. Thompson's team has launched what they call the Space Food Truck Initiative. They've converted their research vessel into what they describe as a mobile test kitchen for cross-cultural culinary exchange. Footage played of Dr. Thompson's latest experiment. She stood in the converted bowling alley's kitchen, now equipped with quantum-stabilized cooking surfaces, explaining to a group of fascinated alien chefs how to make the perfect grilled cheese sandwich. The bread needs to achieve quantum superposition, she explained, flipping a sandwich that somehow existed in multiple states of toastedness simultaneously. It's both grilled and not grilled until you observe it. We call it Schrödinger's snack. But the implications go beyond food. Mexley pressed on. Humans are using probability surfing for entertainment. The next clip showed the galaxy's first FTL concert tour. A human band had modified their instruments to use quantum harmonics, creating what they called music you can hear across space-time. Their hit single, Quantum Love, Baby Don't Hurt Me Across Multiple Dimensions, had somehow topped charts in 3 galaxies simultaneously. Furthermore, Mexley continued, looking increasingly distressed. They've started organizing what they call flash mob physics events. The council watched footage of hundreds of human ships appearing simultaneously at predetermined coordinates, performing choreographed probability surfing maneuvers that, when viewed from a distance, created giant smiley faces in spacetime. We've also documented the emergence of quantum surfing as a competitive sport, Mexley added. Humans are literally using their FTL drives to ride probability waves for fun. They're organizing tournaments. There's merchandise. The presentation showed clips from the first annual Probability Surfing Championship held in the Orion Nebula. Competitors performed increasingly impossible maneuvers through spacetime, scored by a panel of judges that included both Nobel laureates and professional surfers. Dr. Thompson's team has begun offering what they call quantum cooking classes, Mexley continued. They're teaching beings from across the galaxy to use probability manipulation for, and I quote, making the perfect souffle every time by accessing alternate timelines where it didn't fall. The council chamber erupted in murmurs as they watched footage of an alien chef successfully preparing a perfect French cuisine dish by quantum surfing between probable outcomes until achieving the desired result. But perhaps most concerning, Mexley concluded, is their latest project. The screen showed Dr. Thompson unveiling her team's newest innovation, the Quantum Food Court, a massive space station designed like a 20th century American mall food court, capable of serving cuisine from across the galaxy using probability surfing to ensure every dish arrived at the perfect temperature. They're not just exploring space, Mexley explained. They're making it convenient. The final report to the council included an unprecedented recommendation. Given humanity's demonstrated ability to transform cutting-edge physics into practical applications that actually improve daily life, we recommend immediate integration of their methodology into all aspects of galactic society. Also, the committee strongly endorses Dr. Thompson's proposal for quantum-stabilized ice cream that never melts. Back at Lucky Strike Lanes, Dr. Thompson and her team were testing their latest invention, a bowling ball that existed in quantum superposition until it hit the pins, allowing it to calculate the perfect strike through probability manipulation. You know, she mused, watching the ball achieve yet another perfect score. Maybe we should add a handicap for quantum-assisted bowling. Already done, Jake called from the kitchen, where he was using quantum probability fields to perfect his chili recipe. We're calling it the Classical Physics League. The universe, it seemed, had developed a taste for human innovation. Quite literally. Senior Science Director Kixtel reviewed the preliminary reports from their embedded research team with growing alarm. The mission had been simple: place their finest minds among human scientists to understand their methodology. After 1 year, the results were concerning. Subject A137, formerly our leading quantum theorist, they read aloud to the council, has submitted their latest research paper with coffee stains and pizza grease and a playlist recommendation. The paper in question was titled Vibrational Harmonics in Quantum Fields: Why Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon Makes the Math Work Better. It was brilliant, revolutionary, and included hand-drawn cartoons in the margins explaining key concepts. Subject B242. Kixtel continued, their voice trembling, has been observed wearing what humans call a Hawaiian shirt during critical experiments. When questioned, they responded, "Good vibes help the quantum surfing, dude." The footage showed their once pristine researcher, now sporting colorful attire and a relaxed demeanor, successfully achieving probability field manipulation while humming something called Margaritaville. But the most dramatic transformation was Subject C919, previously known for maintaining the Council's strictest laboratory protocols. Their latest transmission began. "You guys are not going to believe what happens when you play jazz during a quantum entanglement experiment." "They've all gone native," someone whispered in horror. The evidence was undeniable. The embedded researchers had not only adopted human methods, they'd embraced them. Their laboratories, once models of sterile efficiency, now featured comfortable chairs, snack areas, and what humans called chill-out zones for contemplating complex physics problems. Here's Subject D455's latest equipment requisition, Kixtel announced. They're requesting, and I quote, 1 mini fridge for energy drinks, several beanbag chairs for brainstorming sessions, and a karaoke machine because quantum harmonics respond really well to Journey songs. The council watched footage of their elite research team engaging in what Dr. Thompson had termed physics karaoke night. The disturbing part wasn't that they were singing, it was that their experiments were showing unprecedented success rates. Their research papers, Kixtel noted, while maintaining technical accuracy, have begun including what humans call jokes. They held up a recent publication titled Schrödinger's Cat Walks into a Bar, a new approach to quantum uncertainty. The paper was mathematically flawless. Perhaps most alarmingly, Kixtel continued, they'd started using human idioms in official communications. Subject E767 responded to a critical breakthrough by declaring Holy Quantum Mechanics, Batman. The phrase has since spread through our entire research division. The transformation extended beyond mere behavior. The embedded team had begun approaching problems with what they called the Thompson method, a combination of rigid scientific principles and what humans termed vibing with the universe. Check out this methodology section. Kixtel displayed another paper. They've included a section on getting into the zone as a critical experimental parameter. And it works. It actually works. The results were undeniable. The infected, transformed. Researchers were producing breakthrough after breakthrough. Their papers, while unorthodox, were revolutionizing galactic science. They'd even started a band called Quantum Uncertainty and the Probability Surfers. Their latest hit, Wave Function, Just Go With It. The final report to the Council contained an unprecedented recommendation. Given the demonstrable success of human-influenced research methods, we propose mandatory loosening up sessions for all Council scientists. Additionally, we suggest reclassifying good vibes as a measurable scientific parameter. In a private note, Kickstel added, "I've begun taking guitar lessons. For purely research-related purposes, of course." Back at Lucky Strike Lanes, Dr. Thompson was hosting another Physics Friday, now attended by scientists from across the galaxy. The sight of serious researchers bowling in lab coats while discussing quantum mechanics had become surprisingly normal. "You know," she told Jake, watching an alien physicist celebrate a strike with a perfectly executed moonwalk, "I think we might have started something here." "Yeah," Jake agreed, adjusting the quantum field harmonizer to sync with the building's newest addition, a disco ball. "But did you ever think our biggest contribution to science would be teaching it to chill out?" Above them, the disco ball scattered light across the probability fields, creating patterns that somehow made their calculations more accurate. No one quite understood why. They'd stopped trying to understand why. And that, perhaps, was the biggest breakthrough of all. The Galactic Council's final session on human FTL development opened with an unprecedented event. Background music, specifically Earth classical rock, playing at what Dr. Thompson had identified as the optimal volume for quantum thinking. High Counselor Vakesith, wearing what their aide whispered was a totally radical tie-dyed ceremonial robe, called the session to order with a quantum-stabilized gavel. "Distinguished colleagues," they began, "we are here to formally recognize and integrate human FTL methodology into galactic scientific doctrine. Our findings have been unexpected." The main screen displayed a series of graphs showing scientific advancement rates before and after human influence. The afterlines didn't just trend upward, they ignored the chart's boundaries entirely, continuing onto the wall in marker because, as one researcher noted, sometimes you gotta think outside the box. Way outside. First, Vakesith continued, "We must acknowledge that human FTL technology works precisely because they refuse to acknowledge it shouldn't. Their success rate remains at 100%, maintained by what they call spite, snacks, and really good playlists." The Council reviewed Dr. Thompson's latest paper, Quantum Surfing for Fun and Profit, Why the Universe Just Needs to Learn to Roll With It. It had already become the most cited work in galactic scientific history, despite, or because of, its inclusion of soundtrack recommendations and snack pairings for each chapter. Second, Vakesith pressed on, "We must update our research protocols to include what humans call the vibe check." They paused as their translator struggled with the concept. Preliminary data suggests that laboratory efficiency increases by 47% when researchers are, quote, "feeling it." The evidence was compelling. Footage showed various research facilities across the galaxy, all transformed by human influence. Serious scientists now took inspiration breaks to bowl, dance, or engage in what humans called power naps. Productivity had skyrocketed. Finally, Vakesith announced, "We must address the emergence of what humans call fusion cuisine, both cultural and scientific." The screen showed Dr. Thompson's latest innovation, a quantum-stabilized food court in the Galactic Central Station, where dishes from across the universe were served at their perfect temperature through selective probability manipulation. The line stretched across three-dimensional planes. Therefore, Vakesith concluded, the Council formally recognizes human FTL methodology with the following stipulations. The list appeared on screen. 1. All research facilities must maintain at least one recreational activity area, bowling lanes strongly recommended. 2. Music is now classified as essential laboratory equipment. 3. Good vibes are officially recognized as a measurable scientific parameter. 4. All peer reviews must include at least one reviewer who thinks outside the box. 5. Emergency protocols must account for both standard physics and whatever physics decides to do that day. 6. Snack breaks are mandatory during extended calculations. 7. All FTL ships must carry a minimum of 3 backup systems and 1 roll of duct tape. In conclusion, Vixith announced, "We recommend immediate integration of human chaos theory, human methodology, into all aspects of galactic science. Also, we're instituting Casual Friday." The council chamber erupted in cheers, several members breaking into spontaneous dance. Nobody objected. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor after all. Back at Lucky Strike Lanes, now designated as a historical site of scientific revolution, Dr. Thompson and her team were celebrating in their own way, bowling while finalizing equations for their next project. "You know what's funny?" she asked Jake, watching their quantum-entangled bowling ball achieve a perfect strike through probability manipulation. "We didn't really change science. We just helped it loosen up a bit." Speaking of loosening up, Jake grinned. "Wait till they see our next paper, Dance Dance Revolution as a model for quantum state manipulation." "Already submitted," Dr. Thompson laughed, "with a full soundtrack and recommended dance moves." Above them, the disco ball scattered light across probability fields that shouldn't exist, while somewhere in the galaxy, Mrs. Fletcher was organizing the first intergalactic bake sale. The cosmic background radiation had started to sound suspiciously like Queen's "Don't Stop Me Now." The universe, it seemed, had finally learned to jam. And in the end, that made all the difference.